How do you get the courage to start something new, even when you've been doing other things successfully or unsuccessfully? What gives you the courage to say, you know what, I'm going to start a new path? And that's what we're going to be talking about on today's Speak and Get What You Want podcast with Joe Mardesich. How are you, Joe?
I'm good, Chad. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Now, Joe, you have a fascinating story that I want everyone to really try and wrap their heads around. First, you started as a young man and you had a goal to to be a millionaire by the age of 30. And you set that first before we get into this starting a new chapter. Walk me through real quickly that process. You're a young man, you think to yourself, I want to have $1 million by the age of 30. What gave you that thought or even that belief that you could do that?
Well, I had some friends that had taken the plunge to go into business, and they shared some books with me. These are all well-known books, right? I got inspired by, wow, I guess this would be possible. Why not? Anything's possible. Think big. Um, and so I decided I wanted to do that. I didn't want to be struggling and broke and in the same boat as I saw so many other people. And so I did. I set that goal. Um, and I started a business. And the real amazing thing about this thing is once I started figuring it out, I followed a process of writing everything down, like in present tense, reading affirmations twice a day, visualizing and going through all of these goals in my mind and feeling emotions and this process. And I wrote all these goals down, some audacious, crazy goals. And the funny thing is, I went back and looked at that thing 10 years later, and every single one of those had come to pass except one. I was never able to bench press 350 pounds. But in my defense, I'm only 5'8", 850. So, maybe that just wasn't biologic. It sucks.
Wow, that's incredible, Joe. And so you visualized it in your mind, and then how soon before your 30th birthday did that come in? I remember it being a pretty close date.
It was right at 30. I mean, I was right there.
Wow.
And I I I really realized the whole thing when the business that I had built up. We employed an investment banking firm to put us together with some other businesses. We sold, we were acquired, and then I realized that actually in cash, like got the $1.5 million lump in the bank. You know,
That's amazing. And so, Joe, did that experience then, because you've started multiple businesses since then, and some have been incredibly successful and others have not. But what gives you the courage? So you have that experience, you go through those affirmations, those feelings, and you have that success. But you've also, since then, you've also, of course, been met with failures.
yes.
So what
So
what gives you the courage to then start another business?
necessity. I'm 64 years old. I realized that I wasn't going to be able to provide for my family's needs on the track I was on. And let me just explain, I'm not the average family situation. I've got a couple special needs adult kids at my house. I've got a daughter and a granddaughter living at my house. We've got some health problems, so our situation's not, I can't live off of Social Security. It's been expensive over the years, but I just realized I've got to do something. If we're going to not be broke for the next 20 years of our lives, I've got to do something. And I rather than get stuck at the last minute when it was too late, I decided I'm gonna do it now while I still have a little bit of energy left to make it happen for the next couple of years. So, it's just necessity, Chad. Honestly, what's that story in Think and Grow Rich about the general who burned the boats behind his troops?
Right?
I burned my boats because I've learned from experience, every time I burn my boats, it succeeds. And every time I don't, it doesn't.
You know what's amazing about that, Joe, is you before we started recording, we were talking about, man, at what point in life do you have it figured out, right? Because here you were at 30, you'd accomplished your goal, you had the money in the bank, everything was good, and then you're like, okay, now I'm gonna go and do this business, I'm gonna try this business, and then more recently, here you are having tremendous success in the lending business, And most people work a lifetime. You shared with me how much you would make in a given year. Most people would work a lifetime to make that in a given year, right? And you were able to do that. But then you said, but this isn't going to be sustainable for me. So I'm going to change. I'm going to take that jump. And Joe, so many people are nervous to do that. Where do you find the courage to keep doing it?
Um, you know what? I have fear. You work through the fear. You make your best decision and you just, Chad, you and I have some things in common. The courage comes from, you know, I rely on my Heavenly Father to help me, to give me inspiration, to give me courage. So that's where it comes from, ultimately.
Okay, but you said something there that I want to unpack a little bit. You said, I have fear. Joe, I've known you for a long time. Consider you a very close friend. You don't show fear very much. I didn't know you could even say the word. So you just said, I have fear, but it doesn't seem evident.
Well, maybe anxiety is a better term for it, but anxiety is just fear, right?
Hmm.
I mean, fear in all of its labels. I mean, yeah, do I sometimes say I am I crazy? Yes, I do. All my lending colleagues have all pulled me aside one at a time and said, "I wish I had the stones to do what you just did. I can't stand this job, but I just can't see how I can do it, how I can make that jump." So, I don't know why. I don't know why.
But the phrase, Joe, the best way to predict the future is to go and create it, and that's what you're exactly doing. And those individuals that were obviously probably, if they were talking to you, were making well. I mean, they were doing well financially as well, but they hated what they were doing. And you said, I'm not going to continue down this path. They said, it is what it is. How have you been able to manage your fear so that you don't live in a victim mentality, Joe? You've never. That's one thing that is so clear with you. You do not have a victim mentality. And how have you been intentional in managing that?
I have a process I go through every morning. There's certain things I repeat to myself, literally, not verbatim, word for word every single time, but the same thought processes, the same concepts, the same ideas. And I don't know who your audience is, Chad. I know you very, very well. Um, so I will just take the risk and tell you it's very spiritually based, the process. It's based on the fact that I know that I've got a Heavenly Father who is not going to let me down.
I love that.
That's where the courage comes from,
Uh,
because I can't fail if He's on my side. So I make sure I'm in tune first. I make sure He is on my side. I'm doing the things that He's going to support. But then once I know that, there's nothing else to hold me back. Now, having said that, that doesn't mean it's a straight path. It's not easy. You still have to work your butt off sometimes. And He loves to take you one step beyond where you think you can even endure. That's just what He does, right? Because He wants to show you you can actually do more than you think you can. But so it's not easy. He doesn't hand it to you wrapped up with what here my analogy I've given to my kids is getting a gift from Him is kind of like getting a new set of a dresser drawer from IKEA. Comes in a box. It's got a set of instructions. It's got the little Allen wrench and all the stuff that you have to like pull it out and build it, put it together, and you get it wrong, and dang, you take it apart. You have to do all the work. So the blessing comes, but you have to build it, right? And I think that's how it works. Like 90% of the time, I don't think He very often just hands us something. Oh, your family needs $1 million. Here you go. Here's $1 million. I wish, right?
Right. I love that analogy though, Joe, because that's reality. I keep asking God for the dresser put together, right? But so often so often God gives us the dresser like from IKEA. I love that. And you can see the picture, the instructions of what the potential could be and will be if you just put forth the effort.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but like you emphasize, it can be hard. And you touched on this just briefly, Joe, but you have a special needs daughter and you've had other children, and children in general can give you some great learning experiences. But you've embraced your challenges in a way that's inspiring to me. And I know you give a lot of or all of your credit to God, which is I absolutely love. But you said that you think through things in the morning. And that's intentional. Do you do that same routine every morning?
Every morning. Every morning, it's how I get to my baseline for the day.
Mm.
Can't start in a deficit in terms of my faith, my attitude, etc. And when you're doing hard things, it's easy to get beat down. It doesn't maintain itself.
Mm.
You gotta tinker with that like you would maintain anything. If you had some high performance vehicle in your garage, you gotta maintain that thing or it's not gonna keep operating, right? And it's the same thing with our heads, our hearts. And rather than go to some outside party, some therapist or something like that, this is a do-it-yourself job. I think it works the best as a do-it-yourself job. You
Wow.
know?
Right. Right. So then, I mean, you go through that routine to get yourself centered every morning. And that's what I think is important for people to realize is you don't have a great attitude by accident. You don't face challenges with optimism by accident. You have to be very intentional about what it is you want to accomplish. Now, Joe, you are also very clear on what you want, and that's why you're willing to walk away from the very lucrative career that you had before because you knew what you wanted and you wanted to retire a certain way, you wanted to have a certain lifestyle. How much time did you spend reflecting on what it is that you really want?
A lot of time, and over years even really.
Mm.
I've been thinking about a move like this for a while. Chad, I confess, I don't think I probably have the courage that you may think I do because I finally came to the realization my back was against the wall. I'm 64. I'm like, I could do this maybe 2 more years. What's it going to look like? I mean, I'm close to having my back against the wall. I wish I would have done this 5 years earlier or 10 years earlier again, but, I didn't. Maybe I didn't have the courage. Maybe I didn't have the clarity to your point,
Mm.
you know, about exactly really what I wanted. Um, I guess all that comes into play, right? But it's I've been thinking about it for quite some time. And it takes time to get clarity, doesn't it? I mean, it
Oh
just
yeah.
takes time.
And it takes discipline to acknowledge that it takes time, right? You have to really be focused and disciplined to do that. And so you did that. But I love the fact, Joe, that you bring up that you're 64 years old and you realized, wait a second, I'm going to start something brand new in a world that you're completely unfamiliar with. I love that. And when I think you, Joe, you've always lived your life to the fullest. So here you are at 64 starting all over and that's encouraging. It's got to be encouraging for a lot of people listening. And yet here you are smiling full of optimism. And I know that you share with us your morning routine, you share with us your belief and trust in God. But what else, Joe, contributes to you smiling climbing up a brand new hill?
Well, you know what? Here's the thing I did not foresee. So concrete is a very early morning business. Okay.
Hmm.
The average job starts at 6:30 or 7 a.m. I get up most mornings at 4:30, right? Because I do a bunch of exercise. I'm out. It's a physical job. I needed to be in shape. So I've kind of started on a new path of all that. And it's been literally a shot in the arm. Like I feel like I've become a decade younger since I started doing this instead of sitting behind a desk. So the unexpected benefit of this is that the challenge has kind of forced me to respond to it, and my body has responded. Even at 64, I'm actually like getting better again. I was starting to really feel like I was losing it, like I was just getting physically decrepit and stuff like that. I started to feel that closing in on me. And, this is not something I would have chosen because it's concrete. Like that was the last thing in my mind. In fact, when I got the answer to my prayers, this was the way to go. I'm like, really? I had prestige. I was a banker. I was a
Right.
senior vice president, right? I'm in an office, people coming and, you know, asking me for money, and now I'm gonna go out and do concrete bids, and I'm gonna be on jobs at 6:30 in the morning. I'm a blue collar guy, right? But the side benefit of that was that it's rejuvenated me physically.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Taking the time to actually figure out what you want and then having the courage to go and get it is actually rejuvenated you. It's given you passion. It's given you excitement that a lot of people perhaps have lost. In fact, people listening right now have felt that they have fallen into what we call a rut, right? And I live in Southeast Idaho, and there are ruts all over the place in farm fields, right? And that's just where people just go, I guess I just have to be here. I have to be stuck here. But Joe, here you are at 64 saying, no, I don't have to be stuck here. And you leave, and people are actually admiring you because they're like, man, I wish I had the courage to climb out of that rut like you do. And you're saying that's not only, I mean, of course there's gotta be fear, but you feel like it's exhilarating doing what you're doing.
It is. You know what? I feel like I'll probably live 10 years longer because I did this, you know? And don't get me wrong, I'm tired at the end of the day. I like these days, but you know what? I've been sleeping like I haven't slept in a decade. I go to bed and I'm like a rock.
I I love that. I love that. But you also said something there, Joe, and I just want to emphasize this point. You never envisioned that it was going to be concrete. And I think people need to really understand that. When you get clear on your destination, okay, when you get clear on where you want to be, sometimes the car you pick isn't exactly the car you thought you were going to be driving, but it's still going to get you to where you wanted to be. So how have you found joy in concrete? Because Joe, I'll be honest with you, I've seen you succeed in so many different industries. I've seen you crush it. You're one of the most gifted, talented business people I've ever been around. And yet I was like, concrete, Joe, I was like, that's that's nothing like I've ever seen Joe do before.
Yeah, you know what? It was all so I was a as an SBA lender, I analyzed businesses,
Hmm.
right? So all these loans for people acquiring businesses, buying franchises, they're financing things with their businesses. I'm looking at their financials. I'm looking at their tax returns. I'm looking at their ratios. I'm looking at their growth or their declines. So you get to understand business models. I picked this because of the business model. Basically, Sam the Concrete Man is a sales and marketing company that happens to do concrete,
Hmm.
right?
Okay.
It's a good model. They provide a lot of stuff. Um, I mean, I'm going out in estimates, and I'd never talked to the people before. They're doing the digital marketing. They generate the leads. They book the appointments for me. The schedulers do at their headquarters. So that's one less thing that I have to A, figure out, B, do,
Hmm.
C, delegate, and then D, retain somebody to do over a long period of time for this to become a hands-off business for me. That part is already taken care of. So now, because I don't need to do that, the only thing I have to do to really delegate is essentially delegate. I need the minimum I can do to get there, that the shortest distance between A and B is delegate the one job I'm doing, which is to go out, be an estimator and a part-time project manager. If I have one guy doing my job, I could be out of the business in terms of the day-to-day. Probably do it with 2 or 3 people instead, just because I think I can do it more efficiently that way and have some redundancies built in. But I picked the business, to your point about the vehicle, I almost turned it down just because it was concrete,
Right.
right? I'm like, I can't visualize myself doing this, but that's another really good thing to bring up is that if you're looking to start a business, you have to get ego out of the way. Like there are franchises out there that pick up doggy poop or that service porta potties or that, you know, have, they're like dumpster businesses. They have these portable dumpsters they take to construct. You know what? If it makes money and it works for you, who cares?
I
You
love
know,
that.
and I think this is what gets in the way of a lot of people doing this. It's just kind of getting over that status thing, that pride thing, and just say, no, it doesn't matter. This is going to get me where I'm going to go, and this is what I'll do.
It
So
This is the vehicle I'm more than willing to drive because it's gonna get me there. But I love that you brought up the point that you were working in lending and you were looking at balance sheets, you were looking at the P&Ls and you're going, "Wait a second, I like those businesses," right? Like, you and I are both, we're both very, well, we set a man that, on a very high pedestal. His name was Russell M. Nelson, and he was a heart surgeon who lived to be 100 years old. Okay. And I often think, Joe, that when he was doing heart surgery, he would look at those hearts and be like, what did this guy eat? Yeah, I ain't touching that, right? And so he was up close and personal with all these hearts. And he was going, yeah, I want to make sure, oh, this person, that's what I want to do, right? And he lived to be 100 years old. Well, it was the same with you and going through people's balance sheets, going, wait a second, look at these service-based businesses. These service-based businesses are actually really, really profitable and beneficial.
yeah, yeah. No, it was a great advantage to be able to have that kind of a database behind me, looking at stuff, right? So, I mean, yeah. And I used to be a franchise broker years ago, so the idea of looking at franchises wasn't foreign to me. Um, I will say this, there's a whole bunch of them that are not worthwhile. It's probably the minority that I would consider to be worthwhile, but financing a lot of those over the years for people, et cetera, you begin to recognize, what tells you what's worthwhile and what isn't. You know.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I don't think this is a great idea for a lot of people if they want. First of all, if you're looking at doing this, you can't. I did this for years. You can't say I'm going to keep looking, and if I find the perfect business, I'm going to do it. No, it came to the point for me where I said, I'm doing this no matter what, and I'm going to give myself a couple of months, and I'm going to take the very best thing I can find, and I'm going forward.
Mm,
Subtle shift there in attitude, but it makes all the difference. I would have never done it if I was still looking for the perfect match.
right.
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 So
None of us would ever get married either, right? You have to work. You all want that perfect companion, even though we're so flawed. But we and our wives are very close to perfect, right? And so
both
the
of them are,
uh,
I say.
incredible. But the reality is this, Joe, and I just want to end with this. You mentioned throughout this episode, you mentioned several things that just incredibly insightful. But I want to really emphasize the fact that you acknowledge you have fear. You do, but you take the time to address it so that you can overcome it. You are dependent and completely loyal, fiercely loyal to God, which I think is a huge, huge contributor to what you have become. But then the last thing that I really want everyone to hear is that you said, get rid of your pride. If it gets you to where you want to be, then get in the car and go there. You're so worried about what other people are going to think. Joe, no one cares. Everyone's too busy thinking about themselves. And so I absolutely loved your insights, Joe. You are an incredibly inspiring individual. So grateful that you took the time to share these things with us today, Joe.
Oh, Chad, thanks. You know what? I think the world of you, and I'm grateful for the times we had to work together. I wish you weren't all the way up in Idaho so we could do more of that, but maybe one day, huh?
Right? Right? Maybe one day. I appreciate you, Joe. Take care.
All right.
All right. Bye now.
Bye.
Joe.